Welcome back to the Personal Experience Podcast. My name is Jules Scott, and this week's episode of the show is talking about living with bipolar disorder, among a bunch of other things. My guest today is Twitch streamer, former esports professional player, and now esports organizational owner, Michael Udall.
Hi, thanks for having me. Man, I am not used to that intro. I am not used to org owner. That's a new thing.
It's a title you've been trying on for a little bit, and now you wear it proudly.
Yeah, and I just want to say, Jules, thank you for because I'm only able to wear that title because of great people over at Heroes Hearth like you and like Ian. They, took a chance on me and gave me that opportunity, and I just want to say I appreciate you and thank you because I've been loving it. I've been loving this part of my journey, my life adventure, and I'm excited to see where it and Heroes of the Storm goes.
Yes, I mean, your journey has been a big one. Like, you've had a lot of things that have happened up to this point, and you are, how old are you? 24?
Yeah, I'm 24.
24. And so, well, let's start from the beginning. Like, for those who've not met you before, let's start with who you are, where you live, and what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Michael Udall. So I'm 24 years of age. I currently live in basically 20-30 minutes south of Salt Lake in Utah. I moved up here about 2 years ago. Originally, I'm from Mesa, Arizona. Grew up there, born and raised. The reason I'm on this podcast is because most known for being a professional Heroes of the Storm player, and I won Heroes of the Dorm with Team ASU. So after I graduated high school, I went to ASU, competed in large scale esport event, and got second place. And that was something that for me, getting second place was like one of the biggest accomplishments I had ever had up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
I think that really helped inspire confidence in myself that oh my gosh, I could actually do something. And then the next year, formed a team, worked a lot harder, and the whole team, we were actually able to win the whole tournament. And not only did we win the whole tournament, we were undefeated throughout it. So we never once throughout the entire tournament lost one match, which is incredibly difficult to do. So that's still to this day one of my favorite, proudest accomplishments. After that, I got involved in a professional team called Gale Force Esports. We ended up winning a North American LAN. Was a professional Heroes of the Storm player for about 2 or 3 years. I was also streaming on Twitch on the side. And then after HGC, which was like the professional Heroes of the Storm circuit, after it was, basically defunded by the publisher Blizzard, I took about a year off to just, honestly be sad and try and realign and figure out where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. I don't know what type of podcast this is, but I did turn into a bit of a stoner during that time. But it was kind of important, I think, because I think it gave me a bit of a mindset shift, to be honest. I think it helped enable me to view the world in kind of a new perspective,
Mm-hmm.
because I had found so much fulfillment in my life based off winning or losing. I'm very competitive.
Yeah.
And I think it helped me change my perspective from having something be so ultimate as a win or so ultimate as a loss to every single day is just, a matter of moving forward in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And there isn't really winning or losing. It's just movement, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You spent so much of your formative time in a competition setting, which is just dictated upon how good you are or how not good you are.
Mm-hmm. It was difficult. Because it also always didn't feel like it reflected how good I actually was, right? Because, it's you practice for 3 or 4 months in between large scale tournaments, right? And that's anywhere from, 8 hours to 10, 12 hours when you're really grinding and going hard. And it's you spend 3 to 4 months just working, and you have 2 days, you have 48 hours to prove how good you are. Yeah. And that's all everyone's going to judge you from. And it's really just this hyperbolic time chamber of stress. And I think it really took a toll on my mental. It was it was very, very difficult. And both ends of the spectrum, the highs of winning and having this super inflated ego, and the lows of just feeling like I had no worth because I lost, right? I only was good if I was winning. And the second I lost, it's okay, well, I'm just bad now. Mm-hmm. And it's it's not that simple. It's not that black and white.
How much of that was validated by being in the spotlight or not being in the spotlight?
Well, to be honest, I felt like I was in the spotlight either way, but just one of them was for good reasons and one of them was for bad reasons, right? Like VP Core LOL is like a meme for a reason. So anyone in the Heroes of the Storm community, basically, I went to an international event, which international events are like a big deal, like only a couple teams in each region. It was like two. So it's the best two North American teams, the best two European teams, the best two Korean, the best two Chinese, basically all go to like the world tournament. And basically our team was slated to be like the best North American team going into the tournament. And something that I don't think people realized was the hell of a air travel experience we had going up to that tournament. So normally they would fly you out with like 2 days in advance. So basically you'd have some time to, you know, adjust to your sleep schedule. But basically, long story short, our flights got delayed. A bunch of things happened that were out of our control, so that we showed up 30 minutes before our first match. And we had no luggage. And we had just spent, you know, 2 days in a very stressful situation trying to figure out how to basically get to the tournament on time, because we were told if we didn't make it, we'd forfeit. And we had no control over the reason that those, you know, circumstances happened. And one of my teammates that I was with is actually prescribed Adderall, and he didn't have an Adderall prescription. So he's going through Adderall withdrawals. So we ended up losing the tournament, right? Like we went out way earlier than we were supposed to. And the defining moment for everyone walking away from it was my major mistake at the very end of the last game.
Yeah.
And if you go back and watch all the film, I actually played pretty well that tournament. And it's like, I always forget that, because the only moment I ever remember from that tournament is that one mistake I made.
Yeah.
And I think, and so it's like, yeah, like the spotlight's there either way, but it's like the reason the spotlight is there, I think, is what you're, yeah, which I don't know if that makes sense.
Absolutely does. You know, and you spent all of that time basically just having your worth be judged by how good you performed in matches and not necessarily who you were. And that's the blessing and the curse of competitive esports, is that everybody's a critic. And everybody has the I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just said they have the right to be too. Does that make sense? Like,
but you know, I didn't know that you had bipolar disorder. I actually don't even know when you did.
Yeah. I mean, so my story with bipolar is, so basically bipolar runs in my family. So growing up, my aunt, as well as my grandfather on my mother's side, I knew that both of them had bipolar, but I didn't really, you know, as a kid, you don't really understand what it means. Or at least I didn't. And my grandfather ended up taking his own life. So he actually ended up committing suicide when I was 15. And that is when I think bipolar really became a mainstay in my life, because at that point it took away pretty much my biggest role model and the person I looked up to more than anything. Because my grandfather was a larger than life character. It's like very difficult to encapsulate. Like he really is the embodiment of like rags to riches and really like pulling yourself up from your bootstraps. He had made his first, like the first $1 million by the age of 30. And then he had lost it by the age of 31, where like he literally was just up and down when it came to finances. Because when he made money, he didn't know how to keep it because, you know, growing up, like he had an abusive father that was like an alcoholic. He didn't have a mother. And like, it really is crazy to think about where he came from and the family that he was able to create out of it, right? Like my mom was able to go to college. Like I have multiple, you know, uncles that, you know, were able to go to college, or lawyers, you know, were able to get into business. And all of that was because of his individual actions. And I think his bipolar led to helping him be able to accomplish that, because during the manic times, he was able to achieve, you know, these impressive feats, but it ended up costing him everything.
Yeah.
And so bipolar kind of came into my life in a very shocking way. So at 15, my grandfather killed himself, and that was very difficult for the entire family. And I would say I am still kind of reeling from that, even though it was, you know, it was 2011. I have it tattooed on my body, but it's February 2nd or February the 8th in 2011. And yeah, it was just like a really difficult time for the whole family. And 2 years later, I was actually diagnosed with bipolar 2. And it was the difficult thing about it is I had a lot of things happening at that moment. So I was raised Mormon, so LDS faith. So my family is very, very religious. And I realized that religion, for a lot of different reasons, did not work for me.
Yeah.
And it actually was a detriment to my health. So my, end of my junior year, beginning of my senior, I decided I no longer wanted to be Mormon. And on top of that, I actually was in a incredibly difficult snowboarding accident where I was actually life flighted. And I have no memory of the day. I lost a couple of days, suffered a really bad concussion around the same time. So I had a lot of feelings and emotions and pain and things that I didn't know how to deal with, right? I was rebuilding my moral framework. I was coming to terms with, I had this thing called bipolar that had made my grandfather kill himself. And I had just suffered the most traumatic, difficult injury of my life that really, I was in a neck brace. I tore all the, muscles and ligaments in my neck and back. I was in physical therapy for a year. And it's I was trying to grapple with all three of those things. And I did a terrible job at it. I was 17. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know, I was manic. I would go for these terrifying late night drives where I didn't know if I'd come back, if that makes sense. I'm not crazy open about it, but I think I don't know, Jules, when someone says that, what do you think? Because I've kind of been ranting for a bit, and I guess I don't, because I don't talk about these times a lot, and it's not because I'm necessarily ashamed of them or that I'm afraid of them. It's more that when I talk about them, it's difficult to put other people into the mindset that I was actually in. I don't know how to describe it because I don't think there were a lot of factors that led up to it.
Are you afraid that it will frighten people of who you are?
I mean, maybe. I don't know. Well, and I think it's worry that people won't believe me in a way, because it's when you tell about your experience, because there were a lot of things I think about my life that were incredibly easy. That I think, my parents stayed together. I had a great family. I was very lucky to have such a supportive family and friends around me that, helped me. So it's when I talk about these difficult experiences, it's it was difficult. It was really difficult. But also there were other aspects of my life that I think helped me balance it out.
Yeah.
And that, I recognize that those are luxuries. Does that make sense? So it's
well,
not wanting.
What it sounds like you're almost saying to me is that you feel badly about feeling like you had a difficult time when you had all of these other blessings in your life.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And
I'd say that's pretty accurate.
I would say for you, absolutely not. You're allowed to have I have a great set of parents. I still had a lot of difficulties in my life. One does not preclude the other. And having to learn about your grandfather and then go into a situation where you realize that you have this. Is it the same? Did he have bipolar 2 as well?
Yeah. So we have the same disorder. Yeah.
Okay. So you learn that your grandfather had the same thing that you are now experiencing, and the fear of what will this mean for my life.
Well,
and yeah.
And the really difficult thing about it was I thought it was a death sentence. And there's still a part of me that I would say, I think there'll always be a part of me that still feels like it is in a way. Because I look at the two closest people around me that I've watched experience it and live through it. And one of them took his own life, and the other one, I mean, my aunt wrote a book about it. So she's talked about her experience. So that isn't necessarily me exposing her, but she had a very difficult experience with it.
Yeah.
Where she was in and out of, multiple attempts. And so very, not an easy life, it's it very much ran her life in a way that, I thought it was a foregone conclusion that it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when, I'll take my own life. And I don't believe that anymore. But it's been very difficult to come to that realization. And it takes a lot of work every single day to make that reality not there.
Yeah.
Because I really, with my mental health journey, at least, I think preemptive, I call it medicating through my mind, but it's kind of the premise that every day I wake up and I have 24 hours. And how I spend those 24 hours will shape who I am, right? So if every single day I wake up and I go on a run, then I will become a runner after consistency and time has passed. It's like, and I think I've kind of adopted the mindset that every single day, if I wake up and I think about, okay, how is my bipolar trying to run my life and trying to direct me? If I'm conscious of it, and even though sometimes I'm not able to, let's say, control it, because I do think sometimes my bipolar will, like when the live draft's going on for CCL, of course there's a level of mania there, of course, but I'm able to better, I would say, channel it and direct it because I'm more conscious of recognizing what my triggers are and what leads to it. And but I do feel like that's a constant battle that I am still kind of struggling, and I think I'll struggle with until I die, because I don't know, because my grandfather was like 63, 64 when he took his own life. So it's like I don't know how my brain will age with this, mental health, bipolar 2.
Do you take any medication?
So I actually was I'll tell you a bit of the story of so when I was 17, I was in a really difficult place, and my parents, like understandable parents, wanted to try and get me some help. That being said, I didn't want help. I didn't believe that like the therapist or the psychiatrist could help me, but I was underage, so my parents forced me to go. And, my parents and I have had conversations, and they mentioned that they think that was not the correct decision. But I have a lot of empathy for my parents, because they see their 17-year-old son spiraling and in a very, terrifying situation. As my mom, she just lost her dad 2 years earlier, and she sees her son going through a very similar situation and feels powerless to help him. So I have a lot of empathy for my parents, because they forced me to go to therapy and they forced me to go to a psychiatrist, and I got put on basically a pretty high dosage of an antidepressant, and it turned me into basically a zombie, where because they were trying to stabilize my emotions, and I went from having, very highs and lows, which is, common with bipolar 2. And for those of you that don't know, what bipolar 2 basically means is everyone has this, let's call it like an acceptable range of ups and downs. You have good days and bad days. And bipolar 2, a lot of times they'll have, like they call it like higher highs or lower lows. But for everyone that manifests differently, right? Like bipolar people are known to be super impulsive. So like one day they'll just wake up and go on a trip or go on vacation, and it's very spontaneous, or even vice versa, won't get out of bed for a week. And that's how it manifests for me, is I'd be super impulsive and just go do something that was kind of reckless and dangerous, or I wouldn't get out of bed for a week or two. So I just like would not go to school. And so that was my kind of first experience with drugs, and it went very poorly. And after that, I was lucky to meet someone in college my freshman year. Her name was Bridget, and she taught me a lot about, she was currently like training to be a therapist. She was a senior, so she had learned a lot. She wasn't officially licensed, but basically she just talked to me a lot about how I could use mindfulness and kind of hold myself accountable in a way that would be productive and would not contribute to a lot of guilt and shame, which are pretty unhealthy. And for the last 7 years, I haven't been medicated until actually about a month and a half ago, 2 months, just with all the CCL and stream stuff going on. I was feeling like I was spiraling a bit. And I went to a psychiatrist for the first time. And I was actually really proud of myself for that, because I had always been very resistant. And I kind of came to this realization that this person is a professional. They've spent the last 20 or 30 years of their life studying this. And they may not know your individual mind and your body, but they know the broader way that your brain and minds and chemicals work. And there's a lot of information there that they can actually help you with. And so I am currently medicated. So do you want me to tell you? Like, I don't mind telling people. I'm pretty open about it.
Whatever you're comfortable with, Michael. Anything, honestly.
Am I just ranting? I'll say, feel free to.
No. Please just keep going, because you're taking the path I want you to take.
Amazing. And so the thing is that I, for the first time, kind of made the choice that I wanted to not have to be medicated. I was paying to go talk to a psychiatrist just because I wanted to talk to a professional and someone that knew more than I did. And I have on and off done therapy over this last 7 years when I kind of felt like I needed it. But it was more of I did it when I preemptively, right? So when I moved up to Utah 2 years ago, I recognized that change is a big difficult thing for me, right? And a lot of times when I make big life changes, I can, that can trigger my manic or depressive episode. So when I moved up to Utah, I decided I was going to meet a therapist up here a couple of times just to help me kind of adjust through that. And I think doing things like that as I've gotten older have been one of the best things that I can do for my mental health. So me going to the psychiatrist, a couple months ago was a similar kind of act of, hey, this person's a professional. I want to talk to them. I want to get their advice. I want to hear what they would prescribe for me. And once I have that on the table, I will then decide if I want it or don't.
Yep.
And, spending, let's say, $100 to get that information for me was worth it, whether I get the pills or not. And the conclusion I came to was because they were going to start me on much lower doses than what I had experienced before, because I just wanted basically like a slight, what they prescribed is a slight antidepressant and basically a little bit of a stimulant. And that would help off balance, because last time when I was prescribed something, I felt like a zombie and that I had no emotions.
Yeah.
And it actually has been a very good balance for me, where I feel like I was actually talking to my parents yesterday about this. And Devin Nash, he's a YouTuber that I've learned a lot about when it comes to like business and being an esports org runner. He talked about how he tracks his days, and he tracks his days. So basically every single day is either a 2+, and if it's basically 2 pluses, that means it's an extraordinary, a special day. And if it's a 1+, that means it's just a normal positive day. If it's a 1 negative, then it's a normal negative day. And if it's a 2 negative, then it's a 2 negative day where it's really bad, like a breakup, something incredibly terrible. And I think that taking this mix of medication has made it so that I have more just 1+ days and more 1 negative days compared to having more 2+ days and 2 negative days, if that makes sense, where
Totally.
like I still have the range of emotions, but I proportionally have more days falling in an area that is more manageable to live from day to day.
Yeah. It's exhausting to be in the extremes all the time.
Yeah.
And
you go.
How has it been since you've gotten on that medication recently? Have you been feeling like you've leveled off? You're not as like, I don't see zombie with you right now. So
yeah, no, it's been feeling pretty good. I mean, it's been a hectic month, to be honest. I've been working a lot with the org, but I've been really happy about it. I call it work, but it's more like I'm just really excited and passionate to be building something.
Yeah.
And I do think I have like there have been ups and downs, but I think that's okay. It's okay if there's ups and downs, but like the very scary moments where I'm like, okay, well, like, does that make the very scary moments don't feel like they're there as often?
Yeah.
And very scary makes it sound like, because I haven't been suicidal. I was suicidal when I was like 16 to 18, and I haven't been suicidal since then.
Yeah.
But it's like scary in the sense of, okay, if I continue walking down this scary path, I could see in the future that it could lead somewhere that maybe would make me end up like my grandfather, and that's not where I want to go. And I feel like I have, less of those moments and more moments that, like I said, are just more manageable and more like, all right, it's just a shitty day, but guess what? I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I can make tomorrow a good day.
Was your grandfather also Mormon, raised Mormon in that faith, or was his faith different than yours?
I mean, I would definitely say his Mormonism was different than mine. So, being raised, he was kind of Mormon. He ended up going on a mission. So he actually went to a mission in Germany, and that's where he met my grandmother. So he went to Germany, he met her. She moved on over, she emigrated to the United States. Actually, it's a really cute story. So he would like hitchhike for like a day to go visit her like every other weekend. And then they ended up getting married. Is that adorable? I was like,
super
man,
sweet.
Opa, you were sly. Okay, I see you. But yeah, so he was raised Mormon, and I mean, personally, like I have a lot of my family gets a lot of fulfillment from Mormonism, and a lot of people that I know, it provides them a lot of positive things, such as hope, such as joy, such as a sense of community. And I am so happy for them that they're able to have it as that in their life. And I just, because I always like prefacing religion talking that way, is I recognize that it doesn't do the same thing for every person.
Yeah.
Because for me, it contributed to a lot of negative self-talk and a lot of guilt and a lot of feeling like I wasn't good enough and that, I was evil in God's eyes and that I was going to go to hell, because I would do these little, slight, I wasn't a bad kid, right? Like I as a whole, like I was pretty good at, but like normal teenage stuff, like, because they call it like the law of chastity, like I touched a boob and I felt terrible about it.
Yeah.
And I don't think having that level of shame and guilt associated with sexual things is healthy in any way, especially for an adolescent, kid trying to go through puberty and figure it all out. And for me, it just had a very negative, side effect. And I recognize that doesn't happen for everyone, but that's how it played out for me.
Yeah. I was raised Jewish, and I realized pretty quick when I was probably about 14 or 15, about the same exact thing as you, is like, this ain't for me. And the thing that it was very difficult for my father, because he really wanted my sister and I to be committed to the Jewish faith. And I kind of stuck it out until I went to college, and then I was like, nope, I'm not doing this anymore. And it took a while. It took a number of years for him to accept the fact that I just was not. Now I'm agnostic. I am spiritual on everything. I believe that there are higher powers, and I believe that there are things that we don't know that are in the universe. But I can tell you from my own experience, just, how difficult it is for my family to accept that. And I'm wondering what kind of a challenge it was for yours.
It definitely was. And I was going to say, thank you for sharing that, Jules. I mean, that definitely, like, I feel like we both have been through, I mean, not the same experience in any way, but similar experiences. Yeah. And it's difficult because, at least for me, like, and I don't know about your experience, it's like I have empathy for my parents in a way, because I was raised within that religion, and it's like I understand how much it means to you, and I understand what it means for a kid to leave, right? Like the ramifications. I mean, I don't know how it is in Judaism, like, because in Mormonism, they talked about how families can be together forever all the time.
Yeah.
And how the only way you could do that was through the religion. So I felt very difficult for my, like, not, and this is after the fact. For the record, when I was a kid, I was an asshole. I was like, because I was 17 and I was like, don't tell me how to live my life. So this is me after years, having a more, I would say, pragmatic approach on it. But was that something that you kind of experienced, of like, it was like that heaven aspect of it, I guess, in a way?
It wasn't necessarily that. It was just more of an otherism, feeling like you defected from the faith, and therefore, but you were actually a lot more empathetic than I was at your age, because I was just like resistant to everything related to Judaism after I left for years. And my father like would be upset that I wouldn't wish them a happy new year on Rosh Hashanah. And I would just be like, no, I don't want to do it. And over time, as I got older, I realized that this was important to them. And this was something that was important to their lives. And so now I try to make sure that even though I'm not celebrating that holiday, that I send them well wishes during that time.
Like support them doing it.
Yeah. And
yeah, that's awesome.
But it took a while. I mean, we both had to kind of come to the middle, because he was upset with me that I wasn't in the faith, and I was upset with them because they forced me into it. Yeah. And yeah, I can relate in some ways, but it sounds like your experience was a lot more related to the entirety of your identity as a family.
Yeah, well, because Mormonism very much teaches that. It's that, if everyone is Mormon together in the afterlife, in heaven, you can all basically live together forever in heaven.
Right.
So very much the stakes were high when I decided I no longer wanted to be Mormon. And for like, let's call it 3 years, maybe 4 years, my mom and I truly, my mom was better than but I truly hated my mother for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I feel bad about a lot of moments throughout those years where I treated her and my siblings terribly. And I think it was, I was young, but like, that doesn't mean the actions didn't happen, right? The damage was still inflicted. And since then I have apologized for them, but yeah, it was a very difficult 3 to 4 years. And I actually think part of what I love about gaming and esports and my journey within it is I actually think it mended the relationship between my mother and I.
Mm-hmm.
That might sound odd, but my mom never supported me playing video games ever growing up. It was always a waste of time. Any conversation we had about it, if she could have it her way, it would have been 0 video games, or maybe 1 hour.
Yeah.
And as someone that's hyper competitive and was pretty good at video games, I recognized the time it took to try and get good. And also it was one of the only places in my life that I felt like I could get away to and actually shine and actually be myself, because I felt like in the other aspects of my life, I had to lie. I wasn't allowed to not be Mormon in the kind of the community I was in. Like, whereas online, it didn't really matter what my religious beliefs were. It didn't really matter who I hung out with. It just mattered how good I was, and that would basically decide if people wanted to play with me or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I like, the reason video games really helped us, my mom and I, mesh is because I knew how much she disliked it, and I saw the complete 180 she took. Like, my parents, for the first years of the dorm, I didn't tell them about it until a week before we made it to basically the playoffs. Like, I didn't really tell them about it, and we had made it to the Final Four. And I was like, oh, hey, by the way, guys, I made it into this tournament. I'm flying out to California like tomorrow, because like I didn't want them to be like, oh, you're going to school and you're just spending that time playing video games. Like, I didn't want to get lectured by my parents again. And they had a trip planned to Utah where they were driving up. And so basically, like, I don't remember the exact timeline, but let's say I told them on Monday, I was flying out on Wednesday. They were driving up to Utah on Tuesday, and they were going to be there for the entire weekend. And the tournament was like a Saturday, Sunday. And they actually drove from Utah to California, which is like a 12-hour drive, and about 12 hours out of the way. If you're going from Utah to Arizona, it's like the opposite direction.
Yeah.
To just be at my tournament, and they barely made it. And they spent so much time in the car, but they barely made it. And I remember them walking up and like giving them all a hug, because I was like, oh, I didn't think you guys were going to be here. And it was like a really cool, like, it was a really cool experience for me, because after we lost, I remember walking off stage, and I saw my mom talking to Grubby, and I saw my mom talking to Tasteless and Artosis. And I just like, I remember thinking, because I grew up playing StarCraft, like, oh my God, was I a StarCraft nerd? And I remember sitting there and I was like, she has no idea who she's talking to.
Yes.
But my mom's super charismatic. So she's just having up a conversation. They're just chatting. And I'm like, my mom has no idea who they're talking to, as far as like, these are people that I looked up to my whole entire life growing up.
Yeah.
And she's talking to some of my heroes, and they are loving talking to my mom more than they'd like talking to me, because my mom's was so fun to talk to. And it's like, it was just like a kind of a surreal moment. And we still had a difficult like year or two, but just that mere kind of act, I think, showed a lot to me about how much they wanted to support and care. And the following year, with the heroes of the dorm, my mom flew out a couple of my cousins, and she made shirts that all said Michael Udall Fan Club.
Yes.
And my entire family sat in the front row, and they all wore a Michael Udall Fan Club shirt. And for me, it was like, I know that there's a lot of differences between us right now when it comes to our religious beliefs. And that is a constant renegotiation. And that is a constant difficult situation, because every time I come over, everyone prays, and there's just like a constant reminder. And it's like, we were trying to figure that out. But even though we're trying to figure that out, my family and my parents still said, hey, this thing that we used to not support you in, we're here supporting you, and we're here going above and beyond supporting you. Yeah. And it just, I don't think we could have had a conversation to resolve our differences. And I think them just doing that act helped me get over a lot of like the pain and a lot of the, I guess like blame I threw at them for like the difficult experience that I had through the religion. And esports truly changed my life in a lot of ways. And I would say that is probably the biggest one, of like mending my relationship with especially my mother, because she truly in life, if I am in a dark, difficult moment, I call my parents, I call my mom and my dad, and they are truly like the people I turn to for advice. And I am so grateful for that relationship that we have. And I recognize I would not have it, or I wouldn't have it in the capacity that I do without, the esports journey that I went through.
Yeah. And you learned a really valuable lesson about coming to the middle, even when the differences are very wide apart. the ability to for them to come to something that they really strongly opposed for a lot of your life.
My dad was a huge nerd. He's the reason I got into gaming. He would play like World of Warcraft and
yeah. And so, so even then, like you've got someone like your dad in your corner, but your mom is completely against. And, that's huge. And like now, like even back in that second year of Heroes of the Dorm, when everyone saw your parents on screen all the time, because like they were on screen the whole time. Like when they weren't on you guys, they were on your family. And like, even just recently on your stream, you had your dad wound up like calling in when you had Alora on.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that did happen.
And and there's no doubt in in anyone's minds about your parents. Like they love you so much, but I think what it does, and it's important to say, is that what it looks like on the outside is not exactly what is actually happening. And people need to realize that, especially in what we do. In content creation, in esports, what you see on the surface is not always what that person is going through. And especially for you with bipolar. People think that Michael Udall is like this charismatic, really happy, really energetic human, but you're actually going through some very difficult stuff that a lot of people never know about you.
Yeah. And I think it was difficult because I think I had this charismatic expectation that I kind of had to live up to, if that makes sense. And it made me a lot of times, instead of not being that charismatic self, I just would not show up. Does that make sense? So instead, like it either was, I'm going to be all the way manic, charismatic Michael, otherwise I'm just going to be non-existent. And I think that's not a way that you can live life. Like it's not sustainable.
No, it's not. And the one thing that you have been doing in these last several, especially the last year that I've gotten to know you again, is that you strive for authenticity in all sides. When you're on stream, like you leave it all out there, whether you're having a bad game and you're frustrated with your teammates, or you're tired, or you just need to go for a walk and be like, or you're super excited and super up and happy. But the authenticity is important. And doing this show and talking about bipolar and having a religion that you didn't agree with is all about the authenticity to people, to really get to know who you are, because I think that's what you were missing. We actually, Michael and I had like a short conversation before we started recording. And I think that's what you lost in those years where people were just kind of flaming all over you, is that they thought you were trying to be a thing instead of you are this person. You were trying to be a person that you weren't.
Yeah. And it's interesting because because those years, like I definitely think I kind of came off as arrogant, and I think it's because I was trying to psych myself into believing it,
Yeah.
It's like I was trying to, and that doesn't necessarily, like I'm going to say make it okay, but I don't know if that's the right terminology, but it's like, like fake it till you make it, kind of trying to psych myself up. And I was really confident and over arrogant and cocky. But I also, kind of fell on my ass after the fact, and it humbled me in a way that I think was really good and healthy, and has helped me evolve and grow into a person that I think is, has more balance and a better mindset moving forward. And, it really is about the journey and not the destination, I guess would be my biggest, sentiment that where I'm currently at, because the journey truly is life. And at the end of the day, we all have one currency, and there's only one thing, and it's time. And we don't know how much of it we have, and we don't know when it ends, but we do know that I woke up today and I have at least this much of it. And how I spend that current time that I have for this 24 hours is going to shape who I become moving forward. And, if I spend 8 hours streaming, tomorrow I'll be a better streamer because I spent 8 hours practicing and improving. And I really have just taken that sentiment to heart and tried to, I'm a dreamer. I'm very much a dreamer. And I think part of being a dreamer is that I get lost in what could be and the possible timelines of, of reality, right? Because there's so many options. Like, anything could happen if I and maybe that's an arrogant thought, but like I recognize that there are some things I can't do, but I think most things are within reason if people really put their mind to it, or if I really put my mind to it. I think there's a lot of things I could do or I could learn about, and it's kind of just being more thoughtful and more direct or hands-on when it comes to how I actually spend my time, right? Because if I spend my time, at least for me, like when I've been in the most difficult situations, it's when I spend the most time. And this might sound weird because my whole job is online, but it's like when I really spend all my time on social media. Because, one of the biggest changers for me in the last year and a half has been getting outside, going on walks, being in nature, forcing myself to kind of be isolated and sit with my own thoughts. Because if I don't sit with my own thoughts, I don't actually know what I believe. And there's like too many things thrown at me. Like I really think phones, we're all addicted to them, because it's like every like I'm walking around and my phone's vibrating, and every time my phone vibrates, of course I want to check my phone. It's designed so that I want to constantly check it.
Yep.
And when I check it, I get a notification, and that notification is either going to affect my mood positively or negatively. But more than anything, it's going to shape what mood I'm in. And I'm trying to let other things control me less, if that makes sense, and more just being deliberate about what do I believe? What do I actually want? Like, where do I want to go? And I can't do that unless I have time away from my phone and time away from things that are trying to shape what I think about.
Exactly. I relate to that so hard right now.
Oh my gosh, my life is all on my phone.
It is. And my biggest problem, and tell me if you relate to this, is that so I don't sleep very well. I wake up usually in the middle of the night, somewhere around 2-3 in the morning, and can't sleep. And it's a battle for me to not check my phone, and I always lose. And then I see a notification because, our lives are 24/7 when it comes to people's schedules. I get messages all day, all night.
Yep.
And my phone is always muted. It's never, so it doesn't wake me up.
Always do not disturb. My phone's never been on do not disturb for the past year.
Exactly. But you check it, and I will do this in the middle of the night, and then I go, oh shit. Or I see something that I'm going to have to deal with in the morning, or, an issue with work. And I make it even worse by I'm an Apple customer, and I wear an Apple Watch all day. So every day, all day, I'm being buzzed and notified, and so I completely relate to this because my mental sometimes, my father listens to this show, so he's going to laugh at this, but there was a time a couple years ago where I decided that I was just going to go dark for the day. I was going to turn my phone off. I was going to not go on social media. I was just going to spend, as you said, time in my own thoughts. And I don't talk to my parents every day, but it just happened to be a day that my dad wanted to text me to see how I was doing. And I didn't respond for like 8 hours. And he freaked out because I was
worried.
He was very worried. I was just newly living on my own after a really nasty divorce, and things were not good, and he knew it. And he actually called the apartment complex office that I lived at and sent them over to my apartment.
Dang.
To make sure I was okay. And I was like, Dad, I just unplugged. And so I have to have a rule with him now. Like, Dad, I'm turning off all my devices today.
You messaged him to let him know, hey, Dad, I'm going to be radio silent for the next day.
Yeah. But like, imagine like even you growing up, you never even had this phone in your pocket and doing all this connectivity the way that it is now. And so I feel you 100%.
Yeah, it's just difficult to adjust. And it's like your dad is doing that out of care, right? Yeah. It's like your dad really cares about you and was worried about you. And you're like, Dad, I appreciate it. But also, I'm just trying to get some time alone.
I know.
And how is the weather up there, actually? Because you guys all moved out to, is it Michigan or Detroit?
I'm in Minnesota. And
Minnesota. I know M's. I always mess it up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. My parents live in New Jersey, and that's where I'm from. And all my family lives out there. So, parents extra worried because I'm here technically alone. I don't have any family here.
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting thing when you are on your own, you're doing the thing, you're trying to just kind of live life in a respect that, I don't want, but because you and I are very much the same way where everybody can get to us at any time. if we let them.
Yep.
And they can find us and they can talk to us. I get 100 messages a day.
Oh yeah.
It's part of the game. And so, yeah, I am so impressed with you and how self-aware you've become and how you are. And I know that it's like always a work in progress, right? You are always trying and working on trying to improve. We were talking about earlier about how you're working on your schedule and making things a little less hectic for yourself.
Yeah, and it's just a constant renegotiation. I don't know if you feel that way, but I feel like my time's like a constant renegotiation of like, what do I want to do? Like, what am I? And it's like constantly asking myself, what am I actually trying to do here? What do I actually want to accomplish? Like, what is the point, right? Because it's like I don't want to, like I have one pact with myself, and it's that I don't want bipolar to be a death sentence.
Yep.
And it's, I think I really constantly am asking myself, are my actions aligned with that? And I think what I've realized is that I want, because I think that's kind of a shitty life goal, to be honest. I think like, yeah, it's cool to not kill yourself, but also it feels like, shouldn't I be striving for more? Mm-hmm. And I guess that's kind of been the last year or year and a half of coming to terms of like, okay, I don't want to just live life surviving. Mm-hmm. I want to live life trying to help everyone achieve what they want to achieve. And that's kind of what I've been loving about creating the esports organization is I'm working with a team. Like I have a Discord set up and there are, how many people? There are 11 people in it, including so 12, including me.
Yeah.
And, 6 of those are players and the other 5 are people that I am working with to build an organization that's going to provide our players opportunities. And it feels way more impactful when I'm spending my time versus, not making bipolar a death sentence to actually, hey, I want to help provide opportunities to people and for myself to help us live a life where at the end of it, we look back and we've created a lot of memories that have not only been enjoyable, but also help shape us and make us better. And I can't sit out here like and line what all those experiences are going to be. But I just want to kind of create a culture and create a life where we're focused on the adventure and we're focused on the momentum and we're focused on moving forward and becoming better. And it, yeah, like it feels kind of cool because I have some people that are bought into that, right? Like everyone that's working on the organization are working on it because they believe in me, because none of them are working for money.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to me. And I didn't advertise that I was looking for people to help, right? Like every single one of these people, we talked about those 100 messages. They all reached out to me and they said, hey, this is where I can help. This is what I want to do. And this is why I want to do it. And it's because I believe that what, Heroes of the Storm, CCL, and your organization are all trying to do is great. Like, I think it's amazing that you guys are trying to provide and build a grassroots Heroes of the Storm scene. Mm-hmm. And the reason I want to do that fundamentally comes down to, I look at my life. Right? Remember that experience I was talking about with my family and how esports mended that. Mm-hmm. I also think esports really helped me learn how to deal with the highs and lows of my bipolar. It shaped me in such a positive way. And I want other people to be able to go through that experience and to have that experience. And on top of that, I love being an org owner and I love learning new things because I don't want people to think like it's only like altruism. And this might be a bit of a rant, but I don't really believe in altruism. I think everyone does something because they think that it has some perceived value for them. And that's, I think, a great way to operate from the world. We should be trying to live in a world where we're helping not only ourselves, but helping others, right? Like if I'm doing something and it hurts someone else, then that's no longer okay. But what we should all be striving for is interactions and relationships and businesses that are mutually beneficial and that are looking out for the good of everyone. Mm-hmm. And I can't promise that 30K is going to do that all the time. But what I can promise is that's why I created it. And that's what I want to do. And that's, I'm going to make mistakes, but that's really fundamentally what I'm trying to do in life, broader than just my, my current business aspirations.
Yeah. I mean, you sound very much like what Heroes Hearth and Wisdom, what we do in that respect. And that's why we align so well, you and I, because you're absolutely right. Everything that we do for a reason. And, like the very act of me doing this show is not completely, I mean, I would be lying if I said I didn't get something out of it. Like, I share these moments and have these people like you come on this show to share your experiences when I know that it's going to help other people, and that makes me feel good.
That's a great reason to do it.
Right.
That is amazing. I love that.
And it makes me happy, and it makes me want to do it more. And what you've experienced with 30K, your org, is that you're doing something that's making people feel good and inspired, and they're willing to give of themselves to come be a part of that because it makes them feel good too. And that is a noble and admirable thing to do. It is what will make this world better, in my opinion.
I agree.
And you will also attract the right kind of people when you do that. You'll have the people who are aligned with your values and your beliefs and your goals. And that's what has happened to me most of my life. And so I'm absolutely thrilled that it's happening for you.
It has been crazy though too, because it's like it's a lot of faith. It's and I don't know if I can deliver, if that makes sense. Like because I look at like my work experience, I look at what I've done, and it's like, okay, well, I played video games professionally for 4 years, and then after that I worked customer support at a tech company, and I worked in a bagel shop for like 3 months before I quit. And before that I worked on like a ranch. And it's like, what business experience do I have that makes me qualified to try and run an esports organization? And I guess being a player helps, but also, man, there is so much to learn. And I love learning. I think like if someone asked me one word to describe myself, I would say curious, because I love learning, and I am just so, I would say, like enthralled with trying to like dissect and understand how the world works. And it's been so fun to kind of have this medium to explore it through. Like I set up an LLC. I've been learning how to build and create a brand. I've been learning how to try and do merchandise. We're currently setting up a website. Like I'm trying to figure out sponsorships. I had to be a general manager. I had to draft players. I had to learn how to trade. Like it's been really, really, really fun. I cannot stress that enough. Like I've been working a lot, but like when work is something you can't stop thinking about because it's so exciting and something that like you really enjoy, it's like, is it even work at that point?
It is, but
yeah, no, you're right. It is definitely. There are a lot of things that I'm like, I don't want to do this right now.
No, it's true. And anyone who says to you, and I've seen this in your chat, it tilts me every time when they go, if you love what you do, then you'll never work a day in your life. It's like, that is such bullshit. Sorry, you're working your ass off.
Yep.
But I get exactly what you're saying, because I think you and I are very similar. Like if I am not invested in the work that I'm doing, if I am not bought in and feeling passionate about it, then I'm destructive, actually. If you put me in a really boring job, I will actually just start to self-sabotage. It's pretty bad. And so I need that in my life to be able to be productive, and and that's why I do so well at what I'm doing, is because I'm completely bought in and passionate about it. But you make me push papers around and I'm just going to be like, fuck you. Like,
why am I here? What am I doing?
I'm like, I could just literally be surfing Twitter all day. So, and let me tell you, in a lot of the jobs that I had, I did just that. And
it's interesting, because I would say that's probably been the most difficult part for me to try and figure out, is how do I like, I hate calling it this. I need to figure out a better way to call it. It's like people manage, for lack of a better word. But it's like, how do I like the word collaboration better. Like, how do I collaborate with the people that want to work in the organization and that have way more knowledge and expertise in so many different fields? Like, how do I manage collaborating with all of them and streaming and dealing with the team and keeping my sanity? And it's like, I really am struggling with that, because every time I look at my phone, there are notifications that I do need to answer. And just disappearing for like 2 days is not really something that I can do as much. Right. And I think that also is kind of important to my mental sanity, is like, I need that flexibility to be able to just go on an impulsive adventure whenever I want. And I feel like I'm losing that in a way, where it's, and and I don't know how to come to terms with that. Is like, am I actually losing it? Like, do I just have to schedule it in? But like, if I'm scheduling it in, is it even what I want it to be?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't have an answer.
The thing that you will come to terms with in that, and it happens to a lot of us, especially me, is that you do need to make sure that you dedicate specific time for the freedom, so like today, for example, like you were like, I'm just taking the morning off, and you just did it. And that's perfect. That's exactly what you should do. But it will get to a point in most career paths where the time window starts to shrink into where you can be flexible enough to do that. And then you have to figure out where it's that you carve out that space. And, imagine now adding this on top of having a relationship and then eventually children who take away all of your freedom for that. And, that's kind of the window of what will happen. So it's always going to be a balancing act for you. It will always be a situation where you're looking at this.
And this might sound, I also think I'm the type of person that I need to get lost in something.
Yeah.
Like I think that's how I enjoy my life the most, is to just fully just like run at it until I have no more, and just just to keep doing that, because and not no more, because that makes it sound like I'll burn out, but it's more of just like really giving something my all, because I don't want to do anything else. Like my mom describing me always growing up, and I actually feel like it's pretty accurate. She's like, there's two types of light switches. And Michael, there's two types of light switches. There's the one that's kind of a dial that you can, like 10%, 20%, you can like move up and down. It's like got dim features. And there's the normal light where it's just on or off. And Michael, you're like that one. You're either on or you're off. And it's throughout my life, I've kind of consistently been that way, of like, the day I decided I didn't want to do religion, I was out. I was done. And I kind of flirted back and forth for a couple of weeks, but I had thought about it for a long time, and I had ruminated on it for a long time. But when I actually decided I wanted to make a decision, I made it.
Yeah.
And then I stood behind it and I ran at it. And I think I'm a lot happier and better because of it.
Yeah.
But granted, in relationships, I don't do that well.
That's another minefield to navigate.
Oh my gosh. I mean, is love even real? Is it even possible? I think I need a break from it for a while, to be honest.
I'm right there with you, my friend. I want to ask you one final question, and because we've been talking for almost an hour, my goodness. If there's someone out there listening right now who thinks they have bipolar and is not sure, what would you say to them?
That's a great question. I would ask them first, and I would say, well, first off, it depends where they are in life, right? Like if you're in a very difficult, dire situation where you're contemplating suicide, and seriously contemplating, right? Because I don't know that, only you know that, and like how serious where you're at with it. And if you're at a point where you're seriously considering it, the first thing I would always recommend, I think therapy can be great. And granted, you have to find a good therapist, but the only way to ever find a good therapist is to try. And the first therapist you might go to might not be the right one, but they're a step in the right direction to get you to where you want to be. And if you're in a really difficult situation, that would always be my first step of advice, is to go talk to a therapist or talk to a family member or a loved one or someone that will just sit there and listen and not tell you how to live your life. Because that's the point of a therapist, is they're there to listen to you and to help you vent and to help you process through your emotions. And because not like, there's not a lot of people in my life that I'm able to do that with. And sometimes, spending money to have that is worth it. And that would be my first suggestion for people that are in a really difficult situation. For someone that's, it's like you're unsure, you're kind of going through life, you're not suicidal, maybe life's not necessarily going how you want it, you think you might have bipolar. My first question for you would be, does it, and other people might disagree with this, but this is my experience, and I'm allowed to, give the advice. I would ask you, does it matter if you have bipolar or not?
Mm-hmm.
And And the reason I would ask you that is because how is the diagnosis going to change your life? Does that make sense? Like if you go to a doctor and they tell you you do have bipolar, what are going to be your actions after you learn that knowledge? And if you go to a doctor and they tell you you don't have bipolar, what are going to be your thoughts and actions after you've gotten that knowledge? And my answer to you would be, really question that and asking that in yourself. And if the answer is the same either way of, you know what, I would like to get medicated, or I need something to help, then go talk to a psychiatrist or a therapist and they'll help get you some sort of medication to help you get on track. But if the answer is, if someone tells me I have bipolar, don't have bipolar, and I still know that the way that I'm going to find happiness is to be better about, going to sleep on time or going on walks or spending time with family or knitting or doing my hobbies, or you recognize that the reason that you're not as happy as you are or you're not where you want to be is because you don't have the necessary balance that you need in your life. My advice would be the diagnosis doesn't matter as much as, you making the change to try and have that balance. And going to a professional can help you, but also you have to want to get that balance. And the only way to do it is to kind of force yourself to do it. And at the start, it can be difficult, but with time, it gets easier. And not even just gets easier, it makes you happier and more fulfilled moving forward. So that would be my advice. And everyone is different, and that, it may not work for you, but I know that if you're in a difficult spot, what you're doing is not currently working. You have to change it up if you want different results.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your insights, your experience, your honest perspective on all of this. I swear I could talk to you forever.
It's always such a good time.
It is. And I can't thank you enough for taking time out of this very busy time and everything to join me on the show this week. And I just want to have you tell everyone where they can find you if they would like to share their own experiences. How can they reach you?
I mean, first off, Jules, thank you so much for having me onto your podcast. I've listened to a couple of your episodes. The Dreadnought one is really good. Guys, if you haven't checked out the Dreadnought podcast, I would definitely 10 out of 10 recommend. It was, I think, the first one you did,
right? It was
right?
the first one, yeah.
It's so good. It is so good. Dreadnought, such an interesting person to listen to. So I'd recommend first, go listen to the Dreadnought podcast. But then second, if you want to follow me, I do have social medias. I mean, I'm generally pretty active on Twitter. It's Michael_Udall. I also stream every single day on Twitch. And that is just Michael Udall, which Udall is spelled Udall. Also, I started an esports organization. So if you guys want to support that, it's 30k.org on basically all the social media handles. Currently, we use Twitter. We also use Instagram. And you can support us by, our merchandise will be dropping middle/end of November, so you guys can buy that or watch our games. We're playing in CCL, which is the new grassroots Heroes of the Storm movement, and we're going to be playing basically every weekend. So if you follow our social medias, we'll have more information there. We have a star-studded roster. We have Hasuabs, BBJ, Sammy, Liam. I'm doing quite the sellout. We got Breakwood as well as so Hasuabs, Sammy, Masquerade at Tank, the French legend. So if you guys want to check out our team, definitely do that. And Jules, again, thank you so much for having me on.
It was my pleasure, Michael. We'll see you next time. If you would like to nominate or suggest a guest to be on the show or suggest a topic that you'd like me to cover, you can reach me and the show in a few ways. You can email me at personalexperiencepodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet me at JulesRPG, or you can tweet the show at personalexpshow. The show is available on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Pocket Casts, and YouTube, as well as direct feed. Thank you for listening to the Personal Experience Podcast. Seek understanding, feel empathy, connect to one another. I'll see you next time.